It's draft season. That means it's mock draft season. Matt Williamson's mock draft 2.0 post combine. What was shaken up in the draft world post NFL scouting combine? Where did the quarterbacks land? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Get those mailbag questions in, by the way, to those addresses on Twitter, or you can drop one in the YouTube comments. And of course, subscribe while you're there on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. We appreciate all the everydayers out there making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're getting into another mock draft here. Matt Williamson's second mock draft of this 2024 offseason post-combine edition. Matt, and how much did the combine play into the picks that you project here in your second mock draft?
Quite a bit. So this will be my last one pre-free agency, which of course is going to change everything. You know, like, be nice to know where Kirk Cousins is playing before you do a mock draft. But, you know, so everyone loves a mock, and this is right after the combine. You know, the first one I did was before it, so it seemed like a good time to do it. This will be published on Steelers.com, but it has really nothing to do with them. No trades allowed, which was big. We'll talk about some trades here, and maybe we'll even just start that, because I don't know about you. I want to get your opinion on this super quick. What percent chance do the Bears, Commanders, Patriots stick at 1, 2, 3? I think someone's going to get in there and make a move.
I think it's a much better chance this year of all years that those teams stay and draft a player.
Mm-hmm.
Unless,
I think the Bears are going to take Williams. You know,
yes,
no question.
I mean I think that's for sure going to happen. And
yeah.
There's been talk of maybe the Commanders can muster up something and move up to 1, and then the Bears like 2 guys and they still draft a quarterback, right? And it's not even Justin Fields scenario. I still don't see it. You have the first pick, draft the best guy. You're going to like a guy, you draft him. And the question becomes, now you're number 3 with the New England Patriots. Do they only like 2 guys and they both go? Do you just not like the other quarterback? If you don't like them, don't take them. And then maybe another team does, and you're listening to offers. And you need a lot if you are the New England Patriots. But I don't see the Patriots just staying and drafting a wide receiver. No way. It's quarterback, right?
I mean, unless they traded for Fields or something like that, then maybe. But
why would you believe that Fields is going to have any different success than Mac did with the talent that's on that roster? You need too much.
Right.
So obviously, if you
I'm with you.
Get an offer and you don't like a quarterback, you trade down, you add a bunch of pieces, you're building for the future, you're rebuilding if you're the New England Patriots, but you're not going to stay and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't buy that for the Patriots at number 3. So to me, if I'm doing a mock draft, I don't see a spot where a team is paying the price and those teams are willing to get out of 1, 2, 3. So I've got to go quarterback 1, 2, 3, and then things get really interesting. But for you, how did it go at the top? And for you as well, what order did you have those quarterbacks going at the top?
I did go 3 quarterbacks in a row. Williams to the Bears. I put Daniels to Washington, but the first time around I put May to Washington, and then I put May to the Patriots. Nothing against May. It's just more and more people I talk to, and we probably had 10 different draft nicks, including like Greg Cosell sit down with us, and not to mention the talk at the bars. I think the league is very, very high on Daniels and more accurate. I mean, that's people kept coming back to his accuracy and throwing people open. And we all know he can run, but he definitely had the best year of those 3. So I had him going 2 as opposed to going 3 where I had him the first time around.
And we'll talk about this later on in the week. I've done a projection of just quarterback carousel, including free agency trades and all that, and where I think the best fits are and where I project these quarterbacks to go. And I had it the same way. I like Daniels. I mean, you look at who the offensive coordinator is, what the offense could be there. This isn't a, over the middle timing based system where you might think that a team would like a different quarterback, and maybe even McCarthy or May or Penix and drafting a quarterback later. I do think with Cliff Kingsbury, it's a fit offensively as well. And you're just going to draft the guy with the most physical ability. And a guy who's played a lot of football would be ready to come in and play early too, if you're the Commanders. And to me, that's Jaden Daniels. So I like this. And if I was doing a mock draft today, I would have the same 1, 2, 3. Caleb Williams to the Bears, Jaden Daniels to Washington at 2, and Drake May to the Patriots at 3. And I don't see a team right now moving up. But we've got to talk about some of those teams and where those trades might have been. And then what do you do at pick 4 if it does go quarterback? And like I said, Diana Rossini said, watch out for that. A GM told her not only quarterback, but quarterback in 4 in a row to start the draft. I don't know if I'm there on McCarthy, but are you getting close to there on McCarthy?
No, but I don't care if I am. I mean, this is what the league thinks. And I think Arizona would get calls, as would the Chargers if he's still available. So I think McCarthy has a very, I'm going to say a 39% chance of being a top 5 pick. Maybe not number 4, but I think he's got nearly 50-50 chance to be a top 5 pick because the Falcons are looming at 8. The Vikings may or may not have Cousins. Atlanta may or may not have Cousins. Denver, Raiders, they're 11 through 13. All those guys could get up there, could get in the top 5 and maybe get their quarterback.
We'll get to the Minnesota Vikings and the Atlanta Falcons, and those are interesting conversations momentarily. But after the 3 quarterbacks at the top, who's the Arizona Cardinals taking at 4? Is this the Marvin Harris? Like, nobody has been more commonly selected in one spot in mock drafts, maybe even more so than the Bears, because people are projecting trades with number 1 with Fields staying in Chicago this offseason. Marvin Harrison at 4 is the most popular pick in mock drafts. And it's rare that the 4th pick has the most popular pick, but that's what we're looking at.
And I was chalky and I did it because I know that there's a little bit of bloom off the rose with Harrison. He's not going to work out. He's not even doing medicals except for teams that he's going to visit. He's just phenomenal. And I know some people have said Neighbors is ahead of Harrison on some draft boards. I'm not sure I buy that. I mean, as great as all these people are, Harrison's probably the best prospect in the draft.
I always come back to one question, and I'm not disputing it, but if he was Marvin Williamson Jr.,
right,
would he be as locked in? And he might be, but you got to ask the question.
Yeah, you do. And this is something we'll do later in the draft, but I always kind of put a chip down of one player in any draft class that you think has the best chance to go to the Hall of Fame. Mine would be Harrison. And there's a lot in this one that are pretty strong.
Number 5, Los Angeles Chargers. Joe Alt, offensive tackle out of Notre Dame. Checked all the boxes at the combine. I mean, he is locked into a very high pick. For sure doesn't get past 7 for me. And, the question is, which team, which spot, 5, 6, 7, does Joe Alt end up going?
Yeah, and if you're the Chargers, though, you have your pick of all the tackles. You have your pick of all the receivers not named Harrison. And maybe Bowers is somebody you like, too. So I could think, anyone in the McCarthy sweepstakes would probably be really attractive for the Chargers to move down from.
Especially if you only fell back to 8, where you'd still be picking from the same group of players, just someone else would make some more decisions for you.
Exactly. And this is a team that needs to really build their middle class with young draft picks, too, with all the contracts they have.
Number 6, New York Giants going Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, LSU. How hard do you think about going quarterback or another position here with New York?
No, this was a sprint to the podium one for me. I mean, I think they're kind of stuck with Jones. I guess McCarthy could be in play. You'd have to have that conversation. All the other tackles would be attractive as well. But I think most years Neighbors is a top 2 or 3 pick, and you just have a huge grade on him, and all of a sudden your receiver room is finally fixed.
Pick number 7, this is Joe Alt commonly, and if not, it's a wide receiver a lot of times. 2 of the wide receivers are off the board. Alt is off the board, so the Tennessee Titans at 7. The question comes down to, okay, Rome Odunze, who had an awesome combine, or the next best offensive tackle, and you went tackle here for the Titans with J.C. Latham out of Alabama, who was a big, thick offensive tackle. He didn't time, but he moved around really well at the combine, for sure helped himself. I absolutely believe he's one of the top 3 tackles in this class, a name you don't see up this high very often, but I don't think it should shock people either.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example of what did you change post-combine. And I liked him a lot going into the combine, and I don't even care about what he did on the field necessarily, but talking to a couple O-line people, I'll just leave it at that. They thought this guy's a blue chip all day long. Like he could even compete with Alt to be the first tackle off the board, depending what you're looking for.
Next, we've got the Atlanta Falcons, which is going to be a huge hinge point in this 2024 NFL draft. We'll get to the Chicago Bears' second pick, and of course, we got the Steelers coming up at pick 20. Lots of really good players still on the board, and we got to calculate how many wide receivers and offensive tackles end up going in this mock draft when we're all done, and maybe some other hinge points with trades potentially. Next. Today's episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get buckets right now at FanDuel with your first bet because new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $150 extra to play with at FanDuel if that first bet wins. And you can bet on all your NBA players and favorite teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, tons of ways to bet on the NBA season, NHL, Major League Baseball's getting going here. Can't wait for opening day there. And, I mean, you name it. Think of a sport. I always bring up snooker because I still don't know what it is. People try to explain it to me. I know it's a billiards-related event. Auto racing, golf, soccer, combat sports, you name it, you can get in on that action at FanDuel. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right. We are on to pick 8, which is the Atlanta Falcons. And this one fascinates me because, and it's probably the hardest pick for you to make with no trades in a mock draft, right, Matt? Because I don't envision the Atlanta Falcons on the clock at 8 if they've not already done something at quarterback. But that's the scenario here for you. And you have JJ McCarthy, Michigan quarterback, going 8 to the Atlanta Falcons. And offensively, I like the fit. So the question for Atlanta is, do you go hard after Cousins? If you miss out there or you decide to go into the draft, do you trade up? If you can't get in the top 3, is it worth it for McCarthy to get up to, say, pick 5? And I could see it from the Chargers' perspective, but the Falcons, I could see it both ways. And if you do go into the draft and you're okay with McCarthy and you're okay with waiting for him at 8, that means you already did something at quarterback. So what'd you do? And I got a name for you because they already replaced their quarterback at pick number 3. What about Mac Jones? A minor trade for Mac Jones, because a lot of talk about Fields. I don't like Fields' fit as much as for Atlanta. But what about Mac Jones? A cheap way to say, okay, we've got a guy, there may be something, but it doesn't prevent us from doing anything else. But it also means we don't have to go crazy and trade a bunch of future stuff to go up and get a prospect that we don't think is worth spending all that on. Even if we like him at 8, we don't want to spend 2-3 first-round picks on him in JJ McCarthy.
I like it. And I think Mac Jones is a really interesting offseason name that, the Raiders or the Broncos, whoever, that could be suitable. And we're already hearing that New England's talking to Brissett. If they were to bring in Brissett and draft one high, there's no way Mac Jones is back. But you're right. With the parameters of this draft, I wanted McCarthy off the board. And, not knowing how free agency shook out, Atlanta was as far as I was willing to have him drop. So I wanted to make sure that he didn't get too unrealistic and go to, deep into the 20s or something along those lines. But deep down, on March 6th, I think Kirk Cousins will be a Falcon. And if I'm right about that, would you take Odunze? Would you take Dallas Turner? Would you take Verse? Would you take Brock Bowers? All of a sudden it's like, wow, now we're really cooking at 8.
Dallas Turner, I think that right now I'm marking it down as my first defensive player off the board. And he's got to fit your scheme a little bit. You have to make sure you like that fit for him. And probably he'll weigh in over 250 at his pro day. He's already blazed in the 40. He doesn't need to do that. So Dallas Turner right now is my pick for the top defensive player off the board. And
Me too.
that would probably be the preferred. And look, Kirk Cousins, you had the best defensive player in the draft in the first round. You can trade down. You could play around with that pick all of a sudden. I could absolutely see it. Kirk Cousins with the Atlanta Falcons. Are they ready to pay what it's going to cost to have Kirk relocate from Minnesota too? So right now, I still believe Kirk stays with the Minnesota Vikings, but you got to pay Kirk. Then you still got to pay Justin Jefferson. That ain't cheap.
No, the Viking situation is really interesting. But then I think the Bears are sitting there doing a cartwheel and take Rome Odunze, and put him next to DJ Moore with Caleb Williams coming to town. Like,
Bears are in a great spot. They've got
yeah.
draft capital. They could go up. They could be the team that says, okay, nobody's going up for a quarterback, Los Angeles Chargers, but we want Malik Neighbors. We want a guy we want. Or maybe it does go quarterback from the first four. They go up and get Marvin Harrison instead, right? Or they could sit back and get a really good prospect at pick number 9, whether it's the best defensive player in the draft, whether it's an offensive lineman, whether it's a wide receiver. They're going to have one of those options available for them at number 9, and could be a franchise-changing draft for the Chicago Bears. And in this mock, it's Rome Odunze. Like it.
Right, which I think they would love. I mean, the first go-round, I had Brock Bowers going there, which I know they've called Kmet, but he's a much different player than Kmet. I mean, he'd be a very Caleb Williams-friendly guy as well.
And Odunze is very different from DJ Moore, too, so that works.
Yep.
Number 10, every mock draft has a tackle. Tackle you like there for the New York Jets at pick number 10. You got Olo Fashanu here from Penn State.
Yeah, his stock seems to have cooled, but mostly because the other tackles have heated up so much, and I'm not putting a lot of stock in that. I mean, I think he'd have been a top 5 pick a year ago, and is still a great prospect, fits a need, easy one kind of there.
Is it as easy as with the Minnesota Vikings on the clock here at number 11 in your mock draft, you've got them going with Dallas Turner out of Alabama, edge rusher, and we just talked about how, in this you have projected Kirk Cousins to stay there. Is it as easy as saying, okay, Kirk goes to either Atlanta or Minnesota, and the other team trades up with the Chargers
Dallas Turner
to get
it gets McCarthy, yeah.
So the team that stays gets Dallas Turner, and the team that doesn't trades up for McCarthy.
I lean that way. I mean, that sounds so simplistic. I mean, maybe the next 2 pick teams here, the Broncos and Raiders, have something to say about that. Maybe there's some wild card like the Giants. But I tend to think that Cousins and McCarthy will be in Minnesota and Atlanta.
I've got a couple names that I like for fits for some of these other teams that don't end up getting their guy in the first round of the NFL draft. Denver Broncos is one of those, and you've got them going with Jared Verse, edge rusher from Florida, back-to-back edge here at pick 11 and 12 to the Denver Broncos. With the Broncos, I don't know if they can afford to be doing stuff crazy with signing guys or moving up in the draft because of the debacle of the Russell Wilson thing. I think they have to take their medicine, if anything, move down than trying to go up and get a quarterback.
I tend to agree. I tend to agree. I think it's total rebuild, strip it down, and maybe that's a Mac Jones landing spot or something like that too,
Who do you like for the Raiders at 13?
I went with Arnold as the first corner off the board. I mean, it's a really good corner class. He's done nothing wrong. I considered Quinion Mitchell there too. I think they're neck and neck for first corner off the board, but they frankly could go a lot of different directions.
Apparently, Terrion Arnold was a little banged up at the combine, still ran, didn't put up great time. So we'll see if that looks like at his pro day. Quinion Mitchell's been amazing throughout the whole post-draft process. I tend to think Mitchell is going to go first if the draft was today over Arnold, but I mean, Arnold's right there as well with him. And you have Quinion Mitchell going 2 picks later to the Indianapolis Colts. And it's an absolute Chris Ballard move too. Because if you're going to project somebody at 15, find someone who meets the physical
traits,
not only like meets them, but exceeds the physical traits that you're looking for at whatever position group he's going to. And that's Quinion Mitchell at 15, corner from Toledo to the Indianapolis Colts. And in between those 2 corners, you got the Saints taking Brock Bowers, tight end from Georgia.
Yeah, I think one more pass catcher would go a long way for them. Can't see him falling much past really getting into the teens. I think he's probably one of the best 8 players in this draft, but everyone's going to view him differently. So a little bit, I guess, kind of shoehorned him in there to make sure he wasn't still hanging around. Like, I don't think the Bengals could pass on him, or Seattle. I mean, or maybe even the Colts.
Dark horse quarterback spot for the Seattle Seahawks at 16, Matt?
Yeah, it just seems rich for Bo Nix.
With how many draft classes in a row we've had with, like, big time edge rushers, big time wide receivers, and a lot of offensive linemen in this class, multiple years in a row, Matt, have been pretty weak defensive tackle classes. It's just it's a position that the college football isn't pumping out right now. Byron Murphy becomes the first interior defensive lineman off the board here out of Texas to the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, and I think he's an exceptional player who tested really, really well. They've gone back to the well. They paid for Jones. They traded for Williams. I don't know if Williams will be back. If he is, I would, pivot off of here. But I thought this was about the neighborhood for Murphy.
Bringing in a new defensive-minded head coach that's probably going to want some toys to fix that side of the ball for the Seattle Seahawks as well.
I kind of thought he might be their Matabuke,
I wonder if the Seahawks have already cut both their safeties.
Yeah,
and
right.
they've been a zone cover 3 type of a team for a long time. Could there be some trades with some of those corners? And obviously, Witherspoon, the guy they drafted last year, fits with whatever scheme, and he's fine there. But you look at Woolen on the other side, there could be a lot of shakeup in the secondary with the Seahawks team.
There very well could be, and wouldn't shock me if they signed Geno Stone or Patrick Queen, 2 former Ravens, those type of guys. Brooks is also a free agent, the linebacker. So I think that defense could look a lot different.
And here we go with some more offensive linemen in this mock draft, Matt. You got Talise Fuaga, offensive tackle from Oregon State, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars at 17. Cincinnati Bengals follow that up with Troy Fautanu, offensive tackle, probably move inside from the University of Washington. And then you got the Los Angeles Rams at 19, Jackson Powers Johnson, the center from Oregon.
Yeah, and not to correct you or fight you on this, but because I thought the same thing on Fautanu, but his arms were almost 35 inches long. So I'm open to the idea that he might be the right tackle for the Bengals.
I've been struggling with this. And
I'm back and forth.
Because Fuaga's taller with shorter arms.
Right.
Our team's going to give him the guard treatment because everyone's just assumed, just because the body type for Fautanu, who's a hair under 6'4", he's 6'3" and 7/8, I believe it is. And just you see his body, and he looks like a center, and he does not look like a tackle. But he had longer arms, and he played brilliant left tackle at the University of Washington. And so I wonder how teams will treat those guys, and who will get the tackle treatment, who will get the guard treatment. And with both of those players, I would say make them fail at tackle.
My thoughts exactly.
But some teams, like we saw it with Skoronski last year, the best tackle in the draft. Let him play tackle, prove he can't. Nope, day one guard, right?
Yeah.
And we'll see with some of those thresholds, especially the 34-inch arm length threshold. Fautanu, even though he's 6'3" and 7/8, hits it. And someone like Fuaga and a few of the other guys we're going to talk about don't hit that.
Yeah, I do think Fuaga and Fautanu are more tackle-ish than Skoronski was at this time.
Interesting. And Fautanu is funny because bad body. You see his like shirts riding up when he's playing, wearing number 55, which isn't a tackle number. It's hard to see him and be like, oh, he's for sure moving inside. And you see him move around at the combine. You see how he plays. You see his arm length. Maybe he can play tackle in the NFL.
So the arm length thing was big, and Daniel Jeremiah sat down with us at the Steeler radio booth too, and he had just put out his mock, and he had the Steelers taking Fautanu at 20, and they don't need a guard, they need a tackle. And I immediately said, DJ, like, isn't he a guard? He's like, oh, no. I'm very confident he's a tackle. I'm like, okay. And then we saw the arm length. I'm like, I'll buy in, I guess.
And it might not be for every team, but
right.
The team that drafts him, they might be thinking that way. Next, is it a tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Bottom third of Matt Williamson's mock draft 2.0 next. This episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home that Lombardi is the same as what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die at eBay Motors. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Here we go. Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock at pick number 20 in Matt Williamson's mock draft 2.0. And your selections for the Steelers always weigh, as this is the team that you cover the closest and you're there every day. Who you got for the Steelers at 20?
I went with Amarius Mims, who's just a ridiculous looking human being. And that's back-to-back first-round Georgia tackles for the Steelers. I considered Nate Wiggins. I considered Tyler Guyton. Cooper DeJean is a guy I think would fit here extremely, extremely well. So I've said many times, 20 is a nice spot for where the Steelers are at, tackle or corner most likely. I even consider Brian Thomas Jr., who's slipping more than I want at this point.
Amarius Mims is a tough one. He could go anywhere. I could see what you're saying. Actually, we like him as the second tackle in this class, and he ends up going top 10 because there's no question whether he's got the physical attributes to be a tackle in the NFL.
Oh, man.
The question is, what do you do with the raw tape? He's only started 8 games, and the Steelers just went through this last year where they drafted a raw player. Mims is even more raw than Jones was, and do you want to sit a guy
stuck behind Jones
again? Yeah, so interesting.
Yep. And the next pick here, Tyler Guyton to the Dolphins, is sort of similar as well because Georgia and Oklahoma each had 2 tackles drafted high. So they're immense physical prospects you just don't see enough of yet.
Yeah, and they were just blocked, and they played a little bit, and they said, well, I'm going pro too. So these guys might go a lot higher if they stayed at school and came out in next year's draft. They could have been the first 2 tackles off the board. But and if you're keeping track at home, that's 5 straight offensive linemen in Matt Williams' draft here with Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle from Oklahoma, going 21 to the Miami Dolphins. That brings us to 22 and the Philadelphia Eagles, Matt.
Nate Wiggins, man-to-man corner. I mean, they haven't taken a corner in the first round for a million years, but they do stress the position. Their guys are up in age. I think that's a pretty chalky pick for them probably right now.
It's time. Value, all of it comes together at 22 for the Eagles here.
Yeah, it works out quite well.
Houston Texans pick number 23, Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of fun because I didn't want him falling much more. I think he's going to go very, very high. We had a good wide receiver conversation earlier the week and talked about him quite a bit. Houston has a ton of cap space. I think they might be able to set themselves up to just kind of take truly best available player. And if you can pair him with Dell and Collins, man, I mean, that's kind of scary.
Man, with the way CJ Stroud throws that beautiful deep ball and Brian Thomas Jr. With his speed, his size, the way he can get open down the field and make plays, that would be a lot of fun with what they've already got with Tank Dell and Nico there in Houston. Dallas Cowboys, Graham Barton, offensive lineman from Duke. Now, I noticed that when you put Fautanu in your mock, it said OT. For Graham Barton, it says OL.
It does. And on purpose, because maybe he's a right tackle. I definitely think he's a guard. Most are projecting him to center. Jerry Jones has shown that he does not hesitate to take offensive linemen high and stresses that quite a bit. But Biotish is a free agent. Steele didn't play great at right tackle. Zach Martin's not young. So I'm not sure where he's going to play for Dallas, but he's going to play somewhere.
I see this one quite a bit with the fit for the Green Bay Packers and cornerback Cooper DeJean out of Iowa at pick 25.
I love him. I mean, we just haven't seen anything athletic because of the testing. They kind of have a corner and safety need. I think he's a corner, but he certainly could be a safety. He could be a slot. So I like this fit a lot too.
Arizona Cardinals, their pick they got from Houston in the trade up last year. It's pretty phenomenal that the Houston Texans, by the way, traded away their own pick, and that one they got from Houston ended up being higher at 23 versus 27 against all odds. So congratulations to the Texans on that move that I questioned quite a bit, and they nailed it. Latu, edge rusher from UCLA to the Cards at 27.
Yeah, we'll go back-to-back edge here. I have Tampa taking Chop Robinson and the Cardinals taking Latu. I don't know if Latu falls as far, but the top of the first round is just really, really strong. And, so I think both these teams are very happy with the edge help.
A lot of depth here because I could see Latu, I could see Chop, and thank you. I skipped over the Tampa Bay pick there with the Bucks taking Chop Robinson at 26, right in front of Latu for the Cards at 27. Those two guys, I'm not sure where to put them. I could see them going higher, but that's fantastic value for some of these teams at the end of round one. We might see fewer of those teams that do the thing where they trade out of the end of the first round into the second round because there's still quote unquote first round guys on the board.
Yeah, and it's funny because to bring that up now because all of a sudden at 28, I kind of felt like I was out of first round guys.
Yeah.
Like there's 27 of them. And that's like, just to pull back the screen, Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois, did not get in my first round, but maybe he would still be part of that, first round group where these next 5 picks I kind of thought were really good teams taking second round players at the end of the first.
I love this pick at 28 for the Buffalo Bills for the player as much as the team. That's Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver out of Texas. And I don't know what to do with Mitchell. I've done a deep dive on him already. He ran 4.35, 4.34 at the combine, and he was flying. He doesn't run that fast on the field. He plays 4-5.
Good point.
And my question to him would be, if I was, one of those 15-minute interviews at the combine and I was a GM, I'd be like, why don't you run full speed when you play football? You clearly can run fast, but you don't do it on the field. And it's one of the strangest things I've ever seen. He's got ball skills. He's great in the red zone. He can get open underneath, but it's just the route running, the intermediate area. Like, just go fast when you have the opportunity. Even on crossers and breakaway routes, you don't see him open it up. And so I'm like, why are you going 3/4 speed all the time? So he's a really weird prospect. I think he'll probably end up going high, but I could see team grades being all over the place for Mitchell with, 3rd round grade here, top 15 grade here. I have no idea where to put him.
Agreed. You would think the run fast thing would be a pretty easy thing to coach out of him, but
usually
I do think it's a good landing spot.
Guys run fast and can't turn and run routes, and he does the opposite thing. It's really strange.
That's right. That's a good analysis there.
Detroit Lions, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., cornerback out of Missouri, more of a nickel guy here for the Lions.
Yeah, it was either going to be Rakestraw or Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid has that injury, so I favored Rakestraw, but yeah, I think corner makes a lot of sense for them. That's definitely their weakest position.
Absolutely. The Baltimore Ravens at pick 30, Keon Coleman, wide receiver out of Florida State.
Yeah, I didn't have a great fit for them. I think there's a lot of directions they could go, and they're going to get hit harder by free agency than people might think. But I don't think Odell's going to be back. Bateman's off after this year, and you finally have some good weapons for Lamar. I think you'd like to keep that with a physical guy like Coleman that'll block for their run game. And again, these are kind of 2nd-round players that I have going here, though.
This could be a Johnny Newton spot as well in Baltimore.
Could be, especially if Matabuke's not back.
Right, exactly. Any of these spots here late in round 1. San Francisco 49ers at pick 31, Kingsley Suamataia, offensive tackle out of BYU. And as someone who covers the 49ers, I can definitely sign off on this one. I think, the need, the value. He's a guy that physically is a tackle, which is key for a team like the 49ers. They would want him to come in and start at right tackle right away. But he's young and raw, and you could project him out to be an even better player in the future than he is, but he's good enough and played enough to play right now. 21 years old, has the requisite height, weight, long arms, and all that to stick at tackle versus some of these other guys that might be, maybe he's a guard in the NFL. I don't think Suamataia has that problem. So I like this one for the 49ers at 31.
Yeah, I thought you might think it's a little early, but I just don't think if you're the Niners, you can wait till round 2 to get a tackle, especially the way they fell off the board.
Exactly. It's like we just talked about. You're going to have to get one of your best 2nd-round guys here potentially, rather than one of those 1st-round guys that falls to you at 31. Niners are a trade-up team though as well. I could see them going up into the 20s to get that guy if one of these other players, Guyton or Mims or someone like that, falls to.
And that's very possible. I mean, there's so many good tackles.
And this is the one that's like become a really great fit.
Yeah, I just had to do it.
Especially teams in the NFL are like, I don't love Worthy, but I don't want him to go to the Chiefs at 32. Xavier Worthy, 4.21 speed wide receiver out of Texas, finishes up this mock draft to the Chiefs at pick 32.
And there's other receivers I easily could have put in there, but I thought it was fun and it would make me chuckle, so I did it.
And yeah, Keon Coleman there too. I like both of those fits for Kool-Aid, even depending on what happens with Snead. If he gets traded, then they'll have extra picks to play with to go wide receiver, corner in that 1st, 2nd-round range. So a lot of ways they could go. I think there's going to be a good player for the Chiefs there at the end of round 1. There it is. Matt Williamson's mock draft 2.0 post-combine edition. Let him know what you think. If you did not like his picks, at Williamson NFL. If you loved his picks, let me know at BD Peacock on Twitter, or drop a comment on YouTube and drop a question while you're there for tomorrow's mailbag episode. Talk to you then right here. Peacock and Williamson.